Unreal Engine 5 has big updates on 3D modeling. It has almost everything you need to create game-ready 3D models. In this course, you will learn everything about 3D modeling in Unreal Engine 5. Before you enroll in this course, you should have basic knowledge about Unreal Engine. This course is for beginners who want to learn 3D modeling in Unreal Engine 5. We're gonna start covering how Unreal Engine deals with 3D meshes, like understanding the polygroups and how they work in Unreal Engine. Then you will learn how to create shapes, how to use splines, patterns, extrude, and inserting loops. Then we're gonna apply what we learned on a practical example. We're gonna model a 3D bottle. Then we're gonna move on to create more complicated 3D model. After you finish watching this course, you will have solid knowledge on how to use Unreal Engine modeling tools to create any 3D model for games. So let's get started. Before we start modeling anything, we need to go to the Modeling tab. If you don't see it here, you need to go to Plugins and load it from here. You can see on the left we have tabs. Each one has its own tools and options. We have the Create tab. You can create shapes like box, spheres. We're gonna cover everything later. We have the Xform, like the transform to move the shapes, and duplicate to duplicate the objects, split button to split the shapes to multiple shapes. We have the pattern to align the shapes in circle path or line or grid. Here we have the Deform tab. If you are coming from Blender or Maya, you may have seen these types of deformers. You can bend and twist the shapes. You can smooth the polygons if you have noisy surfaces. You can displace the polygons by adding noise deformers on objects. You can sculpt the mesh. We're gonna cover everything. Here you can edit the poly groups, like extruding multiple triangles together, applying Boolean operation on the mesh, like subtracting one mesh from another one. In the Mesh tab, you will find everything about editing the triangles, like selecting the vertices, faces, and edges. You can extrude the triangles, move them, weld, delete, flip, offset, and so on. We have the Voxel tab. You can work with volumes. It has very limited options like merging and offset. For those who don't know what voxel is, basically it's a volume unit. When you have a volume like a box volume, the box is divided to small boxes, so each box called voxel. And this is a common term in visual effects and effects softwares like Houdini and Maya Flutes. We have the Bake tab. Here you can bake textures like ambient occlusion, vertex color, and curvature. You can inspect your geometry like finding the UV seams and boundary edges and so on. Here you can see we have the UV tab. You can create and unwrap UVs. Here we have an Attributes tab. It contains tools like preparing the mesh for collision and generating polygroups. Finally, we have the Misc tab. It has some tools like converting the mesh to a volume and so on. Now let's go ahead to the Create tab and I'm gonna click on the box. And now I can move the cursor to the viewport and place the box where I want. And notice here we have the create box. It's asking you to accept that or cancel that. And here you can see we have a small window. This is the transformation, so I can move it or rotate it. And notice when I hit the accept button, Unreal will create a folder for you and create the asset inside it. And if I go ahead and create another object, let's say torus, and place it there and hit accept, as you see, this is creating another asset in that folder. If you want to create them in a specific path, you can just delete this one. The menu is outside of the recording area, so let me move that up so you can see it. Right click and delete it, and force delete. And now I can come over here and click on new folder, and let's call it assets. And now we need to do another step. I need to come to the new asset location and click on that and change that to a current folder. And now if I select the folder and go ahead to the box and click and accept, as you see it's there. Click and accept, now it's there. And as you see, when you create the shapes inside Unreal Engine, each shape you create that, it converts that to an asset. Let's say you are modeling something and you don't want every time you click somewhere or create an object, it converting that to an asset and placing that in the content browser. You may need to work and finish your 3D model and then save it as an asset. And this is very annoying when it comes to modeling. So every time you create something, it comes to the asset folder. So instead of doing that, let's go ahead and delete them. And now let's go ahead and delete this one too. Delete them. And now if I go to the box and click there, before I click on accept, you need to go to the output type and change that to dynamic mesh. And now if I accept that, as you see, nothing saved here, and I can go ahead and click there, nothing saved here. After you finish your 3D model, you can select all the objects and go to the X form and click on convert. And now I'm gonna set the output type to a static mesh and hit accept. Now Unreal saves that in the asset folder. In the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Before we continue and using the modeling tools inside Unreal Engine, you need to understand key concepts. When it comes to creating 3D models or selecting triangles, faces or polygons inside Unreal Engine, it's a little bit different from other 3D applications. Unreal Engine render all models as triangulated meshes. When you import or create a mesh, it's automatically broken up into triangles. The reason is Unreal Engine can't import a model that it can't render. Unreal Engine rendering is portable across all platforms, as all graphic drivers recognize triangles. Unreal Engine doesn't like to spend time and resources resolving quads and n-gons into triangles at runtime. That's why it converts all the meshes into triangles. So there is no concept of quad or n-gon, but it does support polygroups, and it's what I'm gonna explain in this lecture. Polygroups are a collection of triangles. If you group few triangles together, then you get a polygroup. And when you want to edit the polygroup, like moving or rotating, you need to use polygroups tools. And when you want to edit the triangles, you need to use the triangles tools. So let's go ahead and see in details how it works. Here in the scene, I have 3 boxes. They are similar, but if I go ahead and change that to wireframe, as you see, I added subdivision to the second and to the third one. If I want to edit the triangles, to move them or rotate them or scale them, I need to go to the mesh and select that. And let's make some room here so we can see the buttons better. So if you click on triangle edit, now you can select the triangle, you can hold shift and select the other one, and then you can move them, rotate them, or scale them. Let's undo that, and you can select the vertices too. If you click on the vertex, you can select that, you can move it, and you can select the edge, you can rotate and move it too. If you want to disable the face selection, as you see, sometimes it's annoying when it comes to selecting the vertices and accidentally you select the edge or the face. So if you come to the selection filter, you can turn off the edge and the face. So now you can just select the vertices. And then if you turn that off, you can't select anything. You can turn on the faces, just you can select the triangles. And the same is for the other object. you can click on cancel or hit escape on the keyboard to exit the triangle edit mode. And let's go ahead, escape again. And now I select the second one. Again, you can go to triangle edit and you can select the faces or the vertices. So let's go ahead and hit cancel. And now if I go to the model, you can see we have the polygroup edit. It's inactive because we need to select the object. So now if I click on polygroup edit, you can see although I have the triangle here, but I can't select the triangle. I can just select the face. So basically this is a polygroup. So now if I move, as you see, I am moving both triangles together. And again for this face and this one too. But if I go ahead to the second box and click again on polygroup, and you can see when I hover the mouse over it, it selects the entire face and I can't select the quads on the mesh. And even if I click there, as you see, I can't select the quads. I can select the entire face. And this is because it's one polygroup. And let's hit escape again on the keyboard. And the third one, if I go ahead and click on polygroup edit, as you see, I can select this part or this part. The reason is because I created this polygroup manually. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a moment. So let's go ahead and cancel that, and let's go ahead and delete everything. Select everything and delete them. If I go to create and click on box and place the box here, and as you see, I have just one face or two triangles, and this is because of the subdivision there. So we have the width, so we can set that to 2 by 2 by 2. And now if I hit accept and go again to model and click on polygroup edit, you can see it's one face, and these polygroups generated automatically for you. Let's hit accept. We can generate our own polygroups. So if you come to the attributes, you can see here we have generate polygroups and we have paint polygroups. You can paint or you can generate them automatically. So if I click on generate polygroups, if I reset that because I set that to quads, so as you see, the conversion mode is face normal. So each face facing the normal, Unreal gives it a unique polygroup. So if I go ahead and change that to find quads, Unreal Engine will find all the quads on the mesh and assign a unique polygroup to each of them. So now if I hit accept, and now if I go back and click on polygroup edit, and you can see now I have polygroups. Let's go ahead and create another box and place it there, and let's increase the subdivision maybe to 6 by 6 by 6 and hit accept. And now we're gonna go to attributes and I'm gonna click on paint polygroups. So let's go ahead and select these faces. Maybe it's not visible, so let's go to unlit, so you can see we can see the color of the polygroups. And I need to remove these triangles. Holding shift and click on that, we remove it. Or let's go ahead and undo that and click there. As you see, I am selecting by mistake this face, so let's go ahead and make the brush size lower and click there. So now I created one polygroup, and if I hit accept, and now if I go to model polygroup edit, you can see it's one polygroup, and I can move, rotate that, or extrude it if I wanted to. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. If I go ahead and create something in the viewport, let's say we're gonna create an arrow, and you can see we don't have any options in the details, but we can change some attributes from here. But if I place that, and you can see I get the transformation for the move and for the rotation, I still don't see anything in the details. Let's set this one to 100 by 100. And now if I go ahead and accept that, you can see here we have 100 by 100. And if I go ahead again, let's go ahead and delete that. And let's go ahead and create that again, place it there. You can see here we have the option delta mode. Let's say you want to move the object 20 unit on X. So as you see, it's difficult here to calculate that. So you can come over here and set plus 20, and this will move it 20 units. Let's set it again, plus 20, and enter. You can see I moved it 20 units on X. There is another option. We can come over here. You can see written delta mode. So if I check that on, now the transformation is 0, 0. So now you can just type 20 unit, and this will move it 20 units. And you can click on reset button. This will turn this to 0. So now again, I can set any number I want, 0. So this is very useful if you want to move the object precisely. So you can use the delta mode, or you can add using the plus button. And now let's go ahead and see how to edit the pivot. So let's go ahead and click cancel on that, and we're gonna click on that again. And if I place the object in the viewport, you can see the pivot is at the bottom of the object, and you can change that from here. If you come to the positioning, you can see we have the pivot location, and it's set to base. I can set that to centered. This will move the pivot to the center. And we can set that to top. Let's go ahead and set that back to base and hit accept. If you go to the X form, you can see we have the transform node. So if I click on that, I get the same options for the transformation and rotation plus the scale too. And now if I want to move the pivot, I can come over here and check on the set pivot mode, and now I can move that and rotate it. And then if I check that off, I can now move the object. Now the pivot is at the center. But if I go ahead and set to complete, the pivot is snapping back to the base. So let's say you want to move the pivot permanently on the center. You can use the edit pivot button. So if I click on that, and now if I move that there and click accept, now as you see it's there. So in the transform, when you click on set pivot mode, you can move it and play with the object rotation or transformation, and after you hit complete, this will snap back to the original position. But if you want to permanently move it, you can come to the edit pivot and move it there, and now if I hit accept, it's there. So let's reset everything. We can just delete this one and create the object again, arrow, and position that and accept that. If I go again to X form and click on the edit pivot, you can see we have some presets for us. For example, I can click on the center. This will center the pivot at the center of the object, and bottom, top, left, right, back, front, world, origin. This is the 0, 0, 0. And notice if I rotate that, before I rotate that, let's go ahead and accept that. If I go ahead and rotate the arrow, something like that, and now click on complete and go back again to edit pivot, if I click on the top, Unreal knows that this is the top of the arrow, and if I click on back or I click on bottom, as you see, Unreal knows that this is the bottom of the arrow. But if you click on the use word box and click on the bottom, Unreal will consider the bottom of the word space is the bottom, and if I click on the top, as you see, the top is here. So this is just switching between the word space and local space in case you want to change it, and hit accept. Now let's go ahead and cover the shapes in details. Let's go ahead first cover the box. So let's click there, and if I go up, you can see the output type is set to dynamic mesh. By default, when you use the modeling tools inside Unreal Engine, this should be the static mesh. So each time you create a shape, you need to come over here and change that to dynamic mesh. But if you want to set the option dynamic mesh by default, you can come over here to the gear button, click on that, and then go to new mesh settings and change it to dynamic mesh actor. After you change it, you need to restart Unreal Engine. So now each time you create a shape, the output type will be by default dynamic mesh. So it's very useful. Not every time you create a shape you need to go to output type and change it to dynamic mesh. We have the width, we talked about that. We have the width subdivision, and we have the depth, and here we have the polygroup mode. So by default it's set to per face. So basically this will create a polygroup based on the shape normals. So each face will have one polygroup. But if you change that to per shape, the entire shape will have one polygroup. So if I click on that, and if I go to model and polygroup edit, you can see it's one polygroup and I can't select the faces. And if I go ahead and cancel that, let's go ahead again to the box and create another one. And if I change that to per quad, and now Unreal Engine will create a polygroup for each face. So if I hit accept and go again to model, polygroup edit, you can see I can select any face I want, and this is very useful option if you want to do modeling. So, and here we have the target surface. It's set to on scene. So if you create another box, as you see, when I move my mouse over the last box, it snaps over it. So I can create that over it, or you can change that to ground plane. Now when you create the box, this will ignore the other objects. So as you see, it sticks to the ground. And we have the show gizmo. Let's go and set that back on scene. And we have the align to normal. This will align the object to the normal of the shape you want to snap on. And here we have the material. We can assign the material. Let's go ahead and type wood, and we're gonna choose this one. And here you can change the UV scale. Let's go ahead and disable the show wireframe. And now if I go ahead and increase the size of the box, let's go ahead and move this one too. So as you see, the UVs are scaling with the object. But if you go ahead and check that on, the word space UV scale on, so now if I change the scale, you can see we have consistent UV scale. But after you hit the accept button, if you scale it, this will scale the UVs again. So you need to scale the shape from the width, depth, and the height in order to work with the word space UV scale. And we're gonna create the sphere. We have similar options except for the shape details. We have the radius, we have the subdivision type. So if I go ahead to the wireframe and change the box to last long, you can see it's completely different subdivision. And here you can control the division too. And the remaining options are similar to the box. And even if you click on the cylinder, as you see, they are all similar except for this part. And we have the torus, and we have the cone. So as you see, everything is similar to the other shapes. And here we have the rectangle and the disc and the stairs. I will leave that to you to explore it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna take a look at the other options. In this lesson, we're gonna take a look at the cube grid. So basically, this tool will allow you to create block out meshes. This is very useful when it comes to level design. So let's click on that. As you see, we have a grid. This is just a visualization or a guide for us. So if I select and drag, I can make a selection. And if you come over here, if you click on the pull, you can create meshes. Or you can hit E on the keyboard. If you click on the push, this will subtract the mesh from it. Pull will add the mesh. So you can hit E on the keyboard to add meshes. And if you hit Q, this will subtract or remove a mesh. And let's go ahead. And if I select some blocks here, and if I hit Q or click on push, this will remove the boxes. As you see, will make a hole. And you can come over here and make a selection. After you make a selection, if you click on the corner mode, this will create 4 points for you. So now if you select just 1 point or 2, and if you hit E on the keyboard, you can see you can create a slope. And let's go ahead and hit accept. And now if I deselect that and go back again to cube grid and make a selection, let's say, and now if I hit Q on the keyboard, as you see, nothing happens. And if I hit E, this will add more geometry. And if I hit accept, as you see, it's separate geometry. We created separate geometry. But if you select that and click on the cube grid, and now if I make the selection and hit Q, as you see, I am removing or adding geometry on it. And if I hit accept, this will be just one mesh. So when you select that and click on cube grid, you are going to add the mesh on that. If you deselect that, you will create separate geometry. So let's go ahead and click on the cube again and make a selection. And if I hit E maybe a few times, and if I come over here and click on slide back maybe 1-2 times, you can see I created a space. And now if I hit E, I can create another layer with gap between them. So again, slide and E, you can create a gap between them. And you can select this line. And now if I hit Q, will subtract the mesh. If I hit E, this will add geometries based on the normals. And now if I hit accept, this is one mesh. And again, cube, let's select those faces and hit E and hit accept. And now let's go back there. Let's say I want to create a mesh aligned to the slope, and if I select that and go to cube grid, as you see, it's hard to align the selection to the curvature of the mesh. So in this case, we need to move the grid there. So if I hold Control and click somewhere here, you can see I moved the grid there. And if you hit R on the keyboard, you can hide the manipulator, as you see. Hit R again to show it again. So after doing that, I need to rotate it. So remember, you hold Control and middle mouse click to snap it. So let's move it there. and just align it to the mesh. Let's see it from here. So now I can come over here and hit E. Now the mesh is aligned to the slope. And if you want to reset the grid location, you can come over here and click on reset and reset. And here you can control the block size. So if I decrease that maybe to 20, you can see we have a small grid. And the grid power is just the power of the block size. So if you set that to 6, this will be 200. It's just the power of the block size. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and apply some of what we learned on a practical example. We're gonna create this 3D barrel. So let's do it. I'm gonna start creating a cylinder. So let's go ahead to cylinder and let's go ahead and reset everything. And I'm gonna place the cylinder there, and let's set the XYZ to 0 to 0 to center it on the 0 0 0. So before I click accept, I need to come to the height, and I'm gonna change this one to maybe 70 and this one to about 30. We can change the height, let's set it to 80. Let's go ahead to the wireframe, and I'm gonna set the radial slices to 12. It's 16, so let's set that to 12. Now we have 12 sides. And for the height subdivision, I'm gonna set that 3. And then I think this is all what we need for now. So let's go ahead and click on accept. So now if I go ahead to the model and if I click on polygroup, so you can see I can select the loops, right? But I want to select it vertically. So if you go to the attributes and if you go to generate polygroups, and if I set that to face normal deviation, basically this will create a polygroup for the faces that facing their normal. So now if I hit accept and if I go back to the model and click on polygroup, so you can see now I can select those. And maybe you didn't see that in the wireframe, so let's go to unlit and do it again. Let's click on generate polygroup, so you can see we have different color for each face. So let's go back to the model and I'm gonna click on the polygroup, and first of all I'm gonna delete this face. Let's delete this one, and I'm gonna delete the bottom one too. And now I'm gonna select the vertices. So here I can filter them. So if you click just on the vertex, and now if I select, I can select just the vertices. And now I'm gonna scale it. So let's go ahead and scale it down. I see we have an issue. So the entire vertices are scaled with it. So this is because of the polygroups. So that's not a problem. We can fix that by going to the mesh, and I'm gonna click on triangle edit. So now I can edit the triangles, but we're gonna use the triangle edit to scale the vertices. So now if I scale them, so you can see the other vertices are not affected. And let's go ahead and do that to the bottom too. So let's go ahead and scale it down just a little bit. And for these vertices, I'm gonna move it up like that, and those I'm gonna move them down, something like that. So now let's go ahead and hit accept, and you will notice we don't see the inside of the mesh because we need to create the material. So let's go ahead and create a material. Let's call it M barrel. Let's dive inside. I'm gonna hit 3 and click somewhere to create the color, and let's set it to white. Hit accept, save. Before we hit the save, we need to go ahead and check on two-sided, and now save it. And now let's go ahead and apply it there. And now the problem is the 3D model is looking very flat. So if I go to lit, as you see, we don't have any light. So let's go ahead and create the lights too. So you can go to window and then click on environment light mixer. This is the easiest way to create the lights. We're gonna click on create skylight, atmospheric, and sky atmospheric, and here we have the light. Very easy. I like to move the icons far away, or you can hit G on the keyboard, but the problem when I hit the G, the manipulator is gone too. So let's go ahead and select them and move it aside. Maybe let's set this one to 5000 to move it away from the viewport, and this one to 5000 because I don't want to see it, and this one to 5000 too. So now I want to go again to model and polygroup, and let's go ahead and select the face. So I'm gonna select the first face and I wanna disconnect that. So if you select that and come over here, if you click on disconnect, now the face is separated. The reason is I am going to separate them because I wanna extrude them. So let's go ahead and select the next one, disconnect. Unfortunately, you can't select everything and disconnect it because it will not work. So you need to select them each one. So disconnect, disconnect, and disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. Let's see. We need to disconnect this one too. Disconnect. And here we have them. So now I can select all of them, all the faces. As you see, the priority is for the selection of the vertices. So let's go ahead and click on that and on the edge. And now if I select, I can select just the faces or the polygroups. And now you can extrude them, or you can click on push pull. So the difference is when you click on the push and pull, if you want to extrude them inside, this is not gonna work. So as you see, it's turning red. Basically, it's cutting the surfaces. But if you want to extrude them inside, you need to click on extrude. So now you can see you can extrude them inside. But I'm gonna use the push pull because I want to extrude them outside. I'm gonna reset everything. So as you see, when I extrude them, we have some gap between them. I don't want that, so I can come over here and click on vertex normal. So now, as you see, they are stick together, but they are separated. So let's go ahead and extrude them something like this thickness. Or you can come over here and change that to fixed, and you can type the number here if you wanted to. And click on accept. And now I like to go ahead and select the vertices there. We need to turn on the selection filter. So if I go to the left view, so as you see, they are not on the same level. So that's why I want to scale them on Z to match the vertices. So now they are on the same level. Let's go back to perspective, and we can do that for the bottom area too. Let's go ahead to left maybe, and we need to scale it. Now it's flat. So let's go to perspective, hit accept. And now if I go again to polygroup and select everything, let's go ahead again, we need to select just the faces. And now if I click on bevel and go ahead and change that. Let's see. I don't know why we don't see the result. Let's do it again. Maybe select them, select everything, and click again on bevel, faces. Let's go ahead and select the edges. Everything, and click on bevel again, bevel edge. And now it's working. It should work on the faces too, but I don't know. Maybe we have some issues because I tried that before and it worked. Okay, great. And hit accept. So now let's go ahead and create the rings. We can create that by creating a torus, place it somewhere there, and you can control the radius from here. Let's set that to 0, 0 by 0 and move it up. Increase the radius. Let's set the minor radius to 2, and the division I'm gonna set that to 12 because we have 12 sides, as you remember when we created the barrel. And for the sides you can set that to 6 or 4, doesn't matter. And now we can just control the radius to match the radius of the barrel. Let's set that to 40, maybe 37, right? And move it up. And now we can duplicate that. Before I duplicate that, I wanna make it flat from the side. So let's go ahead and select the polygroup, and maybe we can go to the left and select all those vertices. Let's go ahead and select just the vertex. So let's select them all. And now in the perspective, I can scale them down a little bit just to make it flat. It's up to you, you can leave it like that too. Nice. And now we can duplicate that holding Alt and move it down. And now we can go to create and click on disk. Let's place it somewhere there and move it up. Let's set this one to 0 by 0. And let's go ahead and decrease the radius, maybe 30. After hitting accept, you need to hold Alt to duplicate that. Let's see. And move it down. We don't see the face because we need to apply this material on it. We need to go ahead and apply it from here, apply it on this one. Let's go ahead and apply it on this one, and let's bring that back there to 0. Let's create the cap here. We can create a cylinder and place it on top of that. And let's go ahead and set the radius maybe to 8, and this one maybe to 10, 3. And let's set the radius maybe to 4 and decrease the height maybe 1.5. Hit accept. Let's move it aside a little bit. I downloaded few materials from Megascans, so you can see we have the metal. Let's drag and drop it there, and we have the wood. You can go to add and click on add Quixel content. You can download it from here. You can just type wood. You can click on surface and type here wood, and you can choose any material you want. After you choose the material, you need to click on download, and after the download finished, you need to click on add, and this will create the folder of the Megascan for you. So let's see, drag it there and drag the metal here too. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. After you finish your 3D model, you may want to export that as OBJ or FBX. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. First of all, we need to select everything. I'm gonna hold Ctrl and Alt on the keyboard and drag a selection to select everything. So now I'm gonna go to transform, and then I'm gonna click on merge. So then I'm gonna click on accept. Now we have one object, as you see. I think we didn't select the disk here, so it's okay. We're gonna select both of them, the first one and control the second one, and then merge again, accept. Now they are one object. So now we need to convert that. As you remember, we talked about that. We're gonna convert that to a static mesh, and the asset location is the current folder. So I'm gonna click on accept. So now it's here. So now in order to export that, you need just right click on that and then go to asset actions and then export. And here you can choose the format you want to export. I'm gonna set that to FBX. You can export that as OBJ2. So let's go ahead and type barrel final and then hit save, and then let's click on export. So now your homework is to create this 3D model. You don't have to follow me exactly. You can create it a little bit different than mine. After you finish it, just take a screenshot using the snipping tool in Windows and then post it in the discussions so I can see it. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Let's continue and take a look at the extrude polygon tool. So basically this tool allows you to create custom shapes. So when you click on that, you get a grid. This will be as a guide for you. So I can click somewhere and then create any shape I want. After you finish creating the shape, as you see now, we can extrude that. I can set the extrusion manually using my mouse, or I can come over here and change that to fixed. Let's set it maybe to 50. And now if I click, and now this will set automatically to 50, or you can change it to flat. So this will create a flat polygon for you. After that, you can extrude that. If I go ahead and reset that, if I create again another shape, if I cross the line, as you see, we get a cross point here. So if I click there, Unreal will delete the extra lines for you. If you don't want that, you can click on self intersections, turn it on, and now if I click, as you see, the line is not finished. You need to close it in order to finish the shape, and now you can extrude it. It's up to you if you want to use it or not. If the gizmo is distracting you, you can click there to hide it, or you can play with the gizmo, rotate it, and then draw on it. Let's reset it. Where is the reset rotation? I think we should be able to reset that, but it seems we can't do that here. Anyway, we can just set it to 0 from here. You can set the values to 0 by 0. The other one is the circle. So you can create a circle shape. Let's move the camera a little bit away, and you can extrude the shape of the circle. You can create a square, and you can create a rectangle. And we have the rounded rectangle too. And by the way, if you want to know the distance, you can see here in the distance we have the distance from the last point. Before you extrude that, you need to come to the radial slice if you want to increase the slices. So if I go ahead and show the wireframe, you can see here we have a lot of polygons, so I can come over here and decrease it maybe to 8, so you can see we get less polygons. And you can increase the size ratio too to make it rounded. And lastly, we have the ring. Let's go ahead and select the ring. So before you click on the extrusion, you need to come to the polygon tab and change the shape if you wanted to, because after you create the shape and click on the extrude, you can't change it anymore. So before hitting the extrude, you need to come here and change it. And hit complete. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the extrude path tool. This is a very useful tool for creating the level design. So for example, if I go ahead and click and close the path, you can see I can create a path and then I can extrude that. We can create very complicated path too. So let's go ahead and do it. So you can see how fast I created that. I think I'm gonna create a new level because we don't have any lighting here. So let's go ahead and don't save that so we can see it better. So let's go again to modeling tab. And the other option is the rounded corners. So if I click on that and then let's go ahead and create the path, and you can see I can round the corners. And here we have very interesting option in the extrude mode. If I change that to ramp fixed, and then let's go ahead and turn off the round corner, because I found there is issue when you are using the ramp fixed with the round corners. So now if I go ahead and click and close the path, and now if I go ahead and change the extrude height, so you can see we have this nice ramp on the wall. It saves you a lot of time when you want to create this type of model. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now we're gonna take a look at the revolve path. So everything you create or draw here, it will be revolved around this purple line. So for example, if I create a mesh there, and you can see it revolved around this purple line. And if you want to edit that, you can hold Control and click there. You can edit the point or add points, so you can select and adjust it. And let's go ahead and click accept. Let's take a look at another example. Let's click on revolve, and I can rotate the grid. For example, if I want to revolve around X, I need to rotate it 90 degrees. And now I'm gonna create the mesh here. So let's go ahead. And close it. And now as you see, it revolved that around this purple line. So now we can adjust it. We can move the points. We can add points, Control and click to add a point. And if you want to add more resolution to the revolved mesh, you can go to wireframe to see that. As you see, we have low resolution. You can come to the step max degree. You can increase the resolution as you see. Or after you finish that, hit accept. You can go to model and click on subdivide to subdivide it. You can increase the subdivision resolution from here. And if I set that to 2, it will subdivide it more. So we have more resolution. So let's take a look at other options inside the revolve object. So if I go ahead and let's go ahead and set that to 90 degree. And let's go ahead and create simple mesh. And now if you come over here, you can see we have the height offset. So if I increase that, you can see we have some offset on the mesh. Let's go ahead and hide the floor. So you can create interesting shapes. And you can reverse that too if you wanted to. And remember, you can add points too. Let's go ahead and reset that. And here we have the degrees, so you can slice that and you can offset it too. So let's go ahead and create another example. Let's cancel it. Revolve. Let's go ahead and create a cup using the revolve polypath. So I can come over here. And place it. And don't worry, if you make any mistake, you can move the points later. So here we have the cup. As you see, the degree is not 360, so let's reset that. And here we have the cup. We can hit accept and we can go to a model and subdivide it to smooth it. Accept. So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's take a look at splines. So if I go ahead and click on draw spline, I can click on the viewport. As you see, I can create spline curve. And if I click and hold the left mouse button and drag it, I can create the tangents. So I can create smooth curve. And let's go ahead and cancel that. And again, click on draw spline. And if you come over here, you can see we have a custom plane. So if I check that on, you can see I have a plane in the viewport. And if I rotate that, let's say, and I can draw on it. So if I click and drag and create the curve. And now if I hit accept and if I go ahead and move my camera, and you can see the spline points are not at the grid exactly. So you can see this point is outside the grid. And if you look here, so you can see it's not straight on the grid that we created. And this is because we need to turn off the option called world object. So basically this will snap the points on the objects in the scene. So I find it very distracting when it comes to creating the splines. So make sure you turn it off. So even if I go ahead, let's go ahead and delete the spline. I want to show you if you check that on, and let's turn off the custom plane. And if I go to the, let's say, front, and let's say I want to draw the spline from here. So if I click and drag, and now from here, everything is normal, right? If I hit accept and go again to perspective, and let's take a look, as you see, it's a mess. And this is because the world objects turned on. So make sure you turn it off before creating the splines. So let's go ahead and delete that. We're gonna create it again. let's cancel it, then delete everything. So now let's go ahead and click on the spline, and I'm gonna go to the front, and then I'm gonna draw the spline. Click and drag, click and drag. And of course you can hit accept and then come back here and adjust the tangent from here. You can add points. You can right click on the spline and click on add spline point. And now if I go ahead to the perspective, you can see everything is normal. As you see, the spline is very big, so we can scale it down. And let's go ahead and move it down. And now we can come to the revolve spline. Basically, this will revolve the spline around this purple line. So as you see, the purple line is not aligned correctly, so we can set everything to 0 here on the rotation. And now we can rotate the purple line 90 degrees. And here we have it. So now we can come over here and adjust the points. Remember, you need to adjust the points before clicking on accept. Let's undo that. And I can move them. And I can add a spline point and the mesh will be updated. Nice. And after you finish that, if you want to smooth it, you can go again to subdivide and smooth it. And now let's go ahead and delete everything. I want to show you how to create a circle or rectangle spline. So let's go ahead and click on draw spline. And if I want to draw a circle, I need to click once on the viewport or maybe twice, and then you need to hit accept. And next you need to right click on the point, not on the spline, and you can see here we have the spline generation panel. So if I click on that, you can see I can change that to a circle or to a square or to a rectangle. And this is a really weird way to create these types of shapes in Unreal. They should set these options somewhere here instead of right clicking on the point and creating that. And this is a really weird and funny way. So anyway, it is what it is. So now I need to select this point and delete it. And here we have the rectangle. And again, let's repeat that. If you want to create a circle, just click one time or twice and then hit accept, and then right click on the point and then click on spline generation panel. And now I can select this circle and then close it. And now you can delete this point, delete it. And here you have the circle. It's really funny, right? So in the next lesson, we're gonna continue. Now let's take a look at mesh splines and how it works. So if I go ahead and draw a spline, let's go ahead and draw a star. And now in order to close the shape, if I click on the point, this will not close the shape. So there is a gap between them. So let's go ahead and undo that. And if I come over here, you can see we have the loop. So if I check that on, this will close the shape. And then I'm gonna hit accept. And now if I click on mesh spline, and you can see we have an error. So if I go to the flatten method, I can change that to best fit plane. And now if I go ahead and increase the thickness, you can see we filled the spline with a polygons. So if I increase that, you can see we can extrude that too. And I can flip the result. And if you come over here, you can see we have the curve offset. So if I increase that, you can see we offsetted the curve. And you can go back to the spline points and move them, and the mesh will be updated. And after you finish that, you can click on accept. and then you can delete the spline. Before I delete that, after we hit the accept button, now if I select the point, as you see, the mesh is not updated. That's why I told you you need to move the points if you need to before you hit the accept button. So now we can delete the spline and we have the mesh. So see you in the next lesson. Now let's take a look at the pattern tool in Unreal Engine. So if I go to Xform tab, you can see we have the pattern. But first of all, we need to create a mesh. So let's go ahead and create a cylinder and hit accept. And now if I go to Xform and click on the pattern, as you see, we have a pattern of a cylinder. And let's go ahead and reset the shape because I changed that before I record the lesson. So the first one, we have the line. Basically, we'll align the pattern in a line. And you can see we have a red icon. You can click on that and drag it to spread them more, or you can use the extend property to extend that. And here we have the count. You can increase the count. And under the direction, we have the alignment. For example, I want to align it, let's say on Y. I need to change that to Y. And the same is for Z. So let's change it back to X axis. And let's go ahead and increase the count and spread them more. The next one, we have the grid, it's self-explanatory, and we have the circle. It will place the cylinders in a circle. So let's go back to line for now. And you can see we have the rotation, translation, and we have the scale. So the third option is the jitter. So if I click on that, and now if I change the X, you can see I can assign random value for each cylinder. And this is very useful to add random rotation on the pattern. So let's go ahead and turn that off. These options, we have the start rotation, we have the end rotation. So let's set the start rotation on X. Let's set it to 90. So as you see, all the cylinders rotated 90 degrees. But if I go to end rotation, and because it's 0, so you can see the end of the pattern is 0. So the value is 90 here and it's 0 here. So you can increase it more. You can get different effect. And we can do the same for the Z or Y. If we set that to 90 on Y, so you can see we have 90 degree as a start point and we have 0 Y rotation on the end, and you can increase it from here. And the same thing is for the translation. So if I go to the start translation and change the Y, maybe let's set it to 300, and let's go ahead and move the camera so we can see it better. And now if I check on the end translation and change it again, so you can see we have 300 to 1000. Let's set it to 0 so we can see it better. So you can see we have 300 to a 0. And if I go ahead and check on the jitter, I can add random position to each cylinder. Let's go ahead and increase it more so you can see we have random position on each cylinder. And the same is for the scale too. Let's go ahead and turn off the jitter, and I'm gonna enable the jitter for the scale. So let's go ahead and change it so you can see we have different scale on each cylinder. And if I go ahead and set the start maybe to 4, maybe it's too much, and let's set the end scale to 0.5, so you can see we have the start as 3 and the end as 0.5. Let's go ahead and reset everything here. Let's reset all the values. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the circle. So as you see, the pattern is aligned in a circle, and we can increase the count, we can increase the radius, and we have the start angle, and we have the end angle too. And the orientation, if I check that on or off, as you see, nothing happens. But if I go ahead and cancel that and rotate the cylinder, let's say 90 degree, and now if I go ahead and check on the pattern, and now if I turn off the orientation, you can see the cylinder are not oriented. But if I turned it on, you can see they are oriented based on the circle direction. And of course, you can use all these parameters with the circle too, like the jitter, rotation, or the translation, or the scale. And now let's take a look how to assign multiple meshes to a pattern. So let's go ahead and cancel that. And I'm gonna create, let's say, a torus, accept, and I'm gonna create a box and accept. And now I'm gonna select all of them and then go ahead again to pattern, and let's reset everything because everything is a mess. So you can see we have multiple meshes, and if I come over here, you can see we have randomly pick elements. This will randomly pick them. And here we have use relative transforms. So if I check that on, you can see they are aligned on a one line. And if I change that to a circle, you can see they are aligned in a circle. Let's go ahead and reset the circle too. And let's increase the radius. And I can increase the count. And now we can add random rotation to each one. And so on. We can add random scale. And so on. So this was fast introduction to pattern. We're gonna use it later in the course. So see you in the next lesson. Before we continue, I like to talk about the mirror tool because we're gonna use it a lot. So it's important to understand it. So if I go ahead and click, let's say, on the stairs, and let's say I want to mirror it on X. So let's go ahead and hit accept, and I'm gonna click on the reset to set the position at 0, 0, 0. And if I go there to the left, so I like to mirror it on X, right? So if I go to the model, you can click on mirror to mirror the stairs. And if you want to mirror it on X, you need to click on forward, because if you go to the perspective, you can see it's mirroring on Y. So if I want to mirror it on X, I can click on forward. This will mirror it on positive X. And now if I hit accept, and if I go to the wireframe, you can see everything is fine. And if I go to lit and select the poly group, and if I select the vertex and move it, you can see the vertices are not welded. And this is because if you go to the mirror, let's go ahead and undo that and click on mirror. And this is because the plane tolerance is set to 0. This will prevent the vertices from welding. So if I move that up, and now if I go ahead and click on forward and hit accept, and let's go to poly group and select the vertex, and you see the vertices welded. But if I go ahead and undo that again, I want to show you another thing. If I select the vertex here and move it a little bit back, and now if I hit accept and go to a mirror and forward, and you can see they are not welded. So this is important to understand. So in order to fix this issue, let's go ahead and undo that. I need to go to the left. Let's see, where is that vertex? It's there. So I need to go to the poly group and select the vertices. You can see it's there. So I need to select that and move it close to the other vertices, or you can select everything like that and click there and scale it. So as you see, they are aligned using the scale. So now if I hit accept and then go to perspective, let's see, we need to align it again. Let's go back again to left and select that. So hit accept, and now we can mirror it. We can click on mirror and forward, and now if I hit accept, you can see we have no issues. So let's select the vertex and see if everything okay. As you see, we don't have double vertices there, and even if I check that there, you can see works fine. So it's important to align the vertices before you mirror the 3D model. And another thing, let's go ahead and undo that. So if I go ahead to the left again and move this stair there, so let's say you want to mirror the 3D model on Z axis, and if I go to a mirror and click forward, you can see it's mirroring based on the closest point on the object. So you can move the plane, you can click and move the plane. You can see this white line, this is the plane. So if you want to mirror that exactly at the center, you can come over here and set the X to 0, and now it's exactly mirrored on a Z. But because we have the gap, the vertices are not weld. So you can come over here and move this one very close. You must move the vertices very close to the line, and you can cross that too if you wanted to. So now if I click on mirror and set this one to 0 and click forward, let's set it back again to 0, you can see the mirror works. So even though the vertices are crossing the line there, and this is because the crop long mirror. So basically this option will cut everything crossing the line. So if I go ahead and cancel that and click on mirror again and turn that off and set that to forward, and if I set this one to 0 and hit accept, and if I go to perspective and select the vertices, you can see we have a problem, right? That's why I told you you need to click on mirror and make sure the crop along mirror is checked on. So basically this will cut everything that is on the other side. So now if I hit accept and then select that, you can see we don't have any issue. I hope you understood the mirror tool. If you have any questions, let me know in the discussions. I did this video because I thought it's important to understand the mirror tool before we move on. In any way, if you have any question, let me know. In the next lesson, we're gonna start.